to meet you, Néstor Torres. I'm excited to see you at Dazzle.
Yes, Wednesday we'll be there. Yes, we'll be there this Wednesday.
And is that your first time coming to Denver?
No, I have actually been to Denver several times. This will be my first time at Dazzles as a soloist since about, I don't know, 7 years ago or so. I was able to perform there as part of the Latin Jazz All Stars ensemble. Very excited. And I love Denver. I call Denver, I call Colorado the other side of paradise, being from the tropics, being from Puerto Rico and living in Miami, we have the palm trees and the beaches and that kind of paradise. But Colorado, with your mountains and your magnificent landscapes, you're definitely the other side of paradise. So I'm always happy to go back.
Well, I love that. I'll take
Mhm.
that. The other side of
Mhm.
paradise.
Mhm.
Your album, This Side of Paradise, you won a Grammy for that album in
Mhm.
2001. And, you've collaborated with some wonderful people, Gloria Estefan,
Mhm.
Tito Puente, Dave Matthews.
Yes.
How did you begin playing the flute?
So my father was a musician, and my cousins and I were banging on the pots and pans since we're like ever since I can remember. So Santa Claus brought me a drum set when I was 5, and I played drums from the time I was 5 through 12. But then in Puerto Rico, there's something called Escuelas Libres de Música, which is free music schools. And at the time, you would go half of the day, either the morning or the afternoon, you would go to a regular school. And then the other part of the day, you would go to music school. My cousins, who also were playing, decided to go, and I wanted to join them. But I didn't see myself studying music like the drums, from an academic perspective. And so they went in the admissions form. So what instrument do you want to learn? I don't know, because trumpets, trombones, saxophones, I'm really used to all these instruments being around them because of my father's work as a musician. And then I looked up at the blackboard and saw the photograph of or the picture of a flute. I said, oh, that's different. I'll try it. So at 12 years old, I decided to try the flute. And my father was not necessarily excited about it because at the time in Puerto Rico, there was no flute tradition to speak thereof, as opposed to in Cuba or in South America, or even India or Native American traditions. So he said, "Well, if you're gonna do it, then you have to become the best at it." And yes, the rest is history. That's how he came to play the flute.
Now, what instrument did your father play?
He played the drums as well as the vibraphone, and he actually played the organ. We would go to the Presbyterian church, and he became very good friends with the organist, which was the son of the pastor. And it was remarkable because my father really learned to do something that not many jazz or non-classical organists do, which is to learn how to play the bass with both feet. You know how it is. I don't know. I don't mean
Mm.
to be too geeky, to explain that. But yeah, my father was a multi-instrumentalist. Interestingly enough, he never got to read music. He was always playing by ear. But he was by far my greatest influence. There's no doubt about
That's a cool journey. And I love that his vote of
it.
confidence was you're going to have to be the best if you do this.
Yes. No, it was, I think, a reflection of a bit of a frustration on his part that he did not get to really pursue, music academically. But it's a long story. I'll have to have a few of things about my father. I have to write something about him someday.
I would love to read that. What is his name?
Nestor. Well, I am almost junior because he's Nestor Ramon. I am Nestor Miguel. We're almost namesakes.
Nice. And what is your mother's name?
Provi, Providence or Providencia. We used to call her Provi.
That's beautiful. And did you have siblings as well?
Yes, I do have two sisters. We're all together. We live very close to each other, and they're wonderful. Yes, I'm the oldest. And interestingly, the youngest sister, which is 12 years younger than me, I call her the chief executive sister. She's like the head of the. She took over my mother's duties as a matriarch, as the head of the family, as it were.
That's beautiful. So you moved to New York when you were 18 years old. Did your
Mhm.
entire family move at the same time?
Actually, my father moved a year before to open the way, and he was starting fresh so he could have a job and set us up in an apartment so that when we arrived, that things would be taken care of.
Okay. And what area did you move to?
Flushing, interesting work. I was grateful for that in that we did not move to the Bronx or Brooklyn, where there was a Latino community. I mean, I love being Latino and being Puerto Rican. I'm very proud of it. But being in Flushing, I think it allowed me to integrate myself into, in New York and being in America in a way that it was a bit of a broader, with a broader experience. As human beings, we have the tendency to stick together to our communities, which is fine. But I was always wanting to reach out beyond. I was just there performing last weekend, as a matter of fact, and we were very right by there, by the Jazz Lincoln Center. What a dynamic, spectacular city. It is very intense, no question.
Are you
Mhm.
located in New York now?
No, I actually have lived in Miami, what turns out to be really most of my life. I only lasted 6 years in New York. I missed the warm weather a lot. And in New
Mhm.
York, at that time especially, was a very hostile kind of dynamic, had a hostile energy. It's still very intense now, but I think some of it has smoothed over, and I don't know that that is the right term. I love New York, and I love you, New Yorkers, just in case. And nothing against New York. It was just my own, proclivity, my own, sensibility as to the weather. And in fact, I really feel that having lived in Miami all this time, that's where I was able to develop my career, develop my sound, the original sound of Néstor Torres. I am quite certain that had I stayed in New York, my music would not be what it is today.
Okay. And your sound is that fusion of jazz
Yes.
and
Mm,
Latin music,
mhm,
pop
mhm.
music. You have a
Yes.
fusion of a lot of different influences. So,
Indeed.
what are some of your biggest musical inspirations?
My father, to be, first and foremost, because of, I would listen to it. He would listen, and he would be from Mongo Santa Maria to Brazil 66 to Faith Brubeck to, Stan Getz. Then you had Machito, Tito Puente. Of course, my great aunt, Ruth Fernandez, she was an iconic Afro-Puerto Rican singer. And when it comes to the flute, there are two main important figures. One is Hubert Laws. He's my idol because he was training at Juilliard, full classical training, and then he brought that into the jazz realm. And then there's a Cuban flutist, no longer with us. His name is Richard Ergues. And his best work, I feel, that he did when he was with this orchestra from Cuba called Orquesta Aragon. So there was an element of lyricism and virtuosity and joy, Richard Edwards is playing that, I was very much influenced by. And it turns out, when in my early days while I was in New York, I was fortunate that this genre, it's a genre of Cuban music called charanga, which features violins and places the flute as a protagonist of sorts, was very popular. So I was able to work as a flutist playing this Cuban style of music, and in so doing, my improvisational approach is that it's melodic, it's danceable, and that has really stayed pretty much what I would say is the backbone or the core of my voice of my musical voice. In technical terms, I'm much more diatonic, much as opposed to the jazz. The jazz vocabulary is so expansive. It's a whole other approach that is much more exploratory, much more intellectual, and just as powerful, of course, and visceral at times. And it's that combination that, has made the music what it is today.
As you're speaking, I just had this smile plastered on my face because I can visualize and hear the music. You're an educator, correct? That's why you're
I
speaking
like
about it.
teaching as well. I love teaching. I have discovered that one of the greatest joys is to interact with young people, and even when they're not young. I was in New York. I was a guest at a New York Flute Club event in which most of the audience were some professionals, but some aficionados, and quite a few of them were adults. That's a word. They were adults. And I just get so much joy if it's, my teaching approach is not at all like, well, I'm going to teach you this. I'm going to teach you how to do this. Rather, let's explore together. Yes, these are some of the basic tools. This is what's available. Do you know this? Scales. Do you know arpeggios? Do you understand? Okay, so with this, then explore and see what you can find. So that's a part of teaching that I like.
That would be really cool to have you as a teacher.
Are you a musician? Are you an artist as well?
I know, but I played
Yes, you
flute
are.
when I
Yes,
was
you.
younger.
So there you go. Do you still have it?
I do, and every now and then I pull it out. I play it for
There
my
you
kids.
are. So you are a flutist. You're a musician. Yes, indeed.
That needs a lot of practice.
Yes, but for me, it's important to communicate that music making should always be about the joy of the music making.
Mm.
Just because you don't do it professionally or you don't spend as much time on it doesn't mean that your ability to communicate through the music or express yourself, and enjoying the process of music making is any less valid or any less important. By the contrary, once you become professional musician, professional instrumentalist, and when you become a successful instrumentalist, there's so many components that are involved in one's career that, I do need to practice.
Thank you for that. I am a firm believer that music is life. Music is so healing.
Oh my
So
goodness, yes.
yeah,
Hmm.
being able to create that and even just play it here at home to make my kids smile. And there's a
Hmm.
joy that goes along with the melody. And so I can't even imagine being in your shoes and being on stage and being able to interact with audiences and see that joy spark in them and have the whole environment just come to life through what you're creating.
There's something that I think about, or there's a phrase that keep reminding myself that for a successful performance, you know, when you get on stage, you just show up and then get out of the way. So becoming sort of a vehicle of whatever is happening. So I always insist and remind my audiences that when they come to see me perform, the members of my audience, when you go to see Nestor Torres, there might be an expectation that you may go to a performance to bear witness to what's happening, to be an audience and watch what's happening on stage. But I insist and I propose that there is no such a thing. Rather, it is an interaction. What happens on stage is a manifestation of what goes on at the moment between the audience and their performers. It is the audience's open hearts and their open minds and their very presence and their willingness to receive whatever it is that one has to offer that makes the music what it is.
I cannot wait. I think that's a great way to prepare the audience for what to expect. The collaborative music making effort. I love that.
Absolutely. But that doesn't mean that I'm going to ask you all to come up on stage and dance and sing and play. It's not necessarily. I might have a friend or two. Maybe you bring your flute. Who knows what can happen?
No,
Bring it along. Bring it. Bring your flute.
no, I could play Mary Had a Little Lamb. I talked about This Side of Paradise, but you've had
Mm.
like 10 albums since then. So which one is your favorite?
Oh, wow. I have a few for different reasons. The first one that comes to mind is Burning Whispers, which is my first record with the Sony label. There's a lot of Nestor Torres there. I mean, the essence of who I am. Then, my very first record, in the charanga Cuban music style, there's this album that I did called No Me Provoques. Well, there's a compilation now called Canciones Primeras. It's a compilation of two charanga records I did. And there's some wonderful things there. And then there's this very special one called Dances, Prayers, and Meditations for Peace. And then there's the most recent one that I did with Corey Allen. He's a wonderful arranger composer that lives in Dominican Republic. He created this suite called the Dominican Suite, using, in the big band language, very sophisticated big band jazz arrangements and compositions, but utilizing legitimate, straightforward Dominican rhythms and with the flute as a soloist. And that work, it was such a great challenge working with Corey. It took for me to really be very disciplined in surrendering to what he wanted to create. And once again, it was a co-creation process, but it just took me to places that I had not been before, musically and artistically. So, as I said, there are a few of them for different reasons. If you really love Latin jazz, I encourage you to listen to one of my records. This was actually nominated for a Latin Grammy and a Grammy, Nouveau Latino. I think you'll enjoy that.
Thank you so much. And I have enjoyed talking to you today. I
As
can't wait to
well,
see you
Rodri.
on Wednesday.
Absolutely. Thank you so very much for the wonderful dialogue and for, sharing my work with your audiences.